Triple H, Stephanie, Vince, that they've gone in a direction. Brock Lesnar is our new champion of the WWE, and he's not a full-time guy. For years, as we grew up, we had Hulk Hogan. Who, he wasn't used on every show. He was sort of like a special time appearance guy. If you went to a house show, he would wrestle in the main event. But this guy wasn't going to be on Superstars. He wasn't going to be on All American Challenge. He wasn't going to be on any of the shows all week. He might do promos. He might do promos for the local market if you're going to a show to tell you that he's going to be there and he's going to make you sell a ticket. But you knew that Hulk Hogan was the main guy. And in order to see him wrestle, you were going to have to order the pay-per-view. I know that he did special shows like Saturday Night's Main Event, and if you were lucky enough to, you were able to stay up and watch that show, you were able to see him wrestle. That was a big-time deal for WWF at the time because, Saturday Night's Main Event taking over Saturday Night Live's time slot, and not really being on prime time because it would come on at 11:30 at night. But on a Saturday, they tuned in and they got some of the biggest ratings wrestling has ever gotten in the history of national television out there. Hulk Hogan was a big time draw for them. But as time changed, I think that the wrestling that we see today, a lot of people point towards the Attitude Era is what's changed it to where they were. I really go back to the era after Hulk Hogan when Bret the Hitman Hart, Monday Night Raw, was starting up with Shawn Michaels. They weren't really into the Monday Night Wars yet, but it was around that time that you basically saw jobbers disappearing from WWE TV. You had lower card stars, but almost everybody on Monday Night Raw was some sort of a named talent that you saw get wins somewhere along the way. And basically, you got to see the champion start working more. Bret the Hitman Hart, when he won the championship, he sort of took on this role of being the worker, the workhorse of the company. You got to see him wrestle championship matches, whether if it was against Bob Backlund, Virgil, the 1-2-3 Kid, which aren't really big names in wrestling. I know Bob Backlund was a champion way back in the days, and he was making his comeback. He wasn't one of the big name stars. He would become WWF champion by beating Bret. But at the date of their Superstars match, he was sort of just that guy. I remember when Bob Backlund came in to the company, and they did the gimmick of him coming back after being out after 16 years. I can't remember. I seem to remember some vignettes of him being some sort of a carpenter, or he might have been some sort of a teacher. I can't remember where they said he was and what he'd been doing, but he wanted to come back and wrestle and prove that he could still do it. I thought the old guy was crazy. He reminded me of the science teacher I had that basically, this guy can't do it. I didn't know anything about the history of wrestling. I didn't know about the history of him winning the championship and keeping it for so long before being beat by the Iron Sheik and basically, then starting the Hulkamania era that would continue on from there. But, Bret Hart really started, being on TV and working. And that's the way we know of our champion as of today. It doesn't matter if the champion was Shawn Michaels or Triple H, The Undertaker, especially a guy like John Cena. Once he finally won the belt, we get to see this guy week in and week out, and now here we are with a champion as a Brock Lesnar. I know that we thought we were going to get this problem when The Rock won the championship at the Royal Rumble, and he was going to keep it in order to, to have this big rematch with John Cena at WrestleMania 29. The people were going crazy. Rock can't win the belt because basically, no one's going to want to go to a house show if the champion's not there. Nobody's going to want to watch Monday Night Raw if the champion's not there. Basically, they were able to fill the gaps between Royal Rumble and WrestleMania. Rock was there a whole lot more than we thought was going to be. But, I think that this is a lot different than that Rock run. Brock Lesnar winning the championship at SummerSlam really changed what professional wrestling is for the WWF. Basically, Brock Lesnar, he got a deal to come to WWE after his his UFC days were done, and basically they wanted his name value. I don't think they were really even going to be, going off what he had done in WWE in the past. It had been a long time. I know a lot of people would remember him, but I don't think everybody remembered, everything he's done. I'm sure there's people watching wrestling today who weren't even watching wrestling when, Brock was champion in 2002 going up against Rock at the SummerSlam. And it's just weird. Brock, wins a championship at SummerSlam, and this guy is just ghost town. We don't even know really when we're gonna see this again. We have to have Triple H announcing that John Cena has basically asked for his rematch, and we're going to see it at Night of Champions. We don't know if we're going to see Brock even, hype this matchup before Night of Champions, if he's just going to be a guy who's just going to be a pay-per-view guy. I mean, you can sort of, go off of what UFC does, where basically a guy has a fight. You see it on pay-per-view, and then all of a sudden, they book him another fight, and then he pops up. UFC doesn't really have television shows where their stars appear on them and fight in random fights in order to get you through it. It's just, there's a guy, and you just have to follow him through him. I think the UFC goes off a thing where basically they hope that every fan buys every pay-per-view because they just get hooked up. WWE, they have to hook you up where basically you're going to watch Raw, you're going to watch SmackDown each and every week, and then all of a sudden at the end of that, if you liked it enough, then you're going to watch the pay-per-view. But then again, as I was saying that thought, I didn't even really think about the WWE Network starting out basically with the way that they've changed the game is with the WWE Network, the pay-per-views are included for only $9.99. They just have to try and get you to hook in to buy this network, and with the network for only $9.99, you get what you used to have to pay $45 to $55 depending on your taxes and your cable or whatever type of hookup you had. Basically, now you get this for I keep on wanting to say for free. For me, I buy the network because they give me enough shows along the way. Basically, when a pay-per-view comes along, whether if it's Payback, SummerSlam, Night of Champions, the show comes on, I get to sit here in my chair, I watch it on my television. I feel like I am, basically getting the pay-per-view like I did back in the day. It's been long enough. I think the statute of limitations are out there. I don't even think that the cable company that I used to have back in the day is still in service. I don't think anybody's going to come after me. Maybe Vince might send Triple H after me and he'll hit me with a pedigree to pay him back. But, back in the day when we used to have we used to call them the black box, even though the box was brown and it sat on top of the television. Basically, it just got all of the channels what you were going for. You just signed up for basic cable and everything worked. The pay-per-view channels, your nudie channels, and all the everythings you ever got. So basically, you were able to watch boxing, you were able to watch wrestling. I remember watching the early days of the UFC when it was basically guys going out there with beer bellies and just throwing these just shots, just hitting each other. Of course, you had guys like Shamrock, and you had guys like Gracie who looked unbeatable because they actually went in there with skill, and they weren't just looking to punch and knock somebody out like it was some bar fight. They would lock you up and put you in a hold. It was confusing because you would see guys that you would think, like if it was a schoolyard fight, getting their ass whooped, win a match because they drop down on the floor, they're able to grab an arm lock, and the guy's tapping out because he doesn't want the other guy to snap his arm. But basically, we used to watch all those back in the day on the black box, and we used to have those. That's the same thing. That's the same feeling I have when I watch the WWE Network. It's like I'm not even really paying for it because I sit down. I love the WWE Network. I love it big time. I watch everything from, I just watched an old Nitro the other night. They just added those up on there. Saturday night's Main Event is a fun show. To get hyped up for the pay-per-views, I've been watching those. I just closed out watching all of the Night of Champions in order to get to this year's Night of Champions. There's just so much stuff on the network I can't even really keep up with the stuff that I want to watch because every day they're adding something new and it wants me to go in a different direction. You know, when it first came out, I was trying to follow the NWO's run when it first came in. Now it might even be better. Maybe it's better that I stop because now I'll be able to go back and actually watch the Nitros, which will hype me up in order to watch the pay-per-views even more. So maybe that's a different direction that I was going to, because I mean, when you watch the first Nitro, they're hyping up, you know, buying, you know, the next pay-per-view, which was going to be Fall Brawl featuring War Games, which, you know, War Games is one of the biggest pay-per-views that WCW ever did. You know, you get, you know, 8 guys in 2 rings. I always didn't like that they had 2 rings in there. I think that definitely you can have 8 guys in 1 ring. That's why I really, you know, think it's foo-foo that basically, you know, WWE always says they're not going to do War Games because they don't want to give away, you know, selling those seats where that extra ring is going to be. Plus, it always looked funny on TV, especially when they did like World War III, where they would have three rings out there, and you know, your camera angles were way off. There was things going on in one ring, and you were trying to watch the things that were going on in the other ring. You can get 8 guys in 1 ring with a cage around it, and you can have enough. You know, I was really hoping that, you know, there's rumors that at Battleground last year, they were going to do some sort of a War Games match, maybe featuring the Shield, maybe the Shield versus the Wyatts, maybe a group of guys going up against the Authority. I think that would have been a match that I think a lot of people really want to see. You know, when the War Games DVD Blu-ray set came out, I think that did real good sales. I remember, you know, people saying that it did exceed what WWF thought they were going to be able to do. We're on a huge, just way off in left field. Basically, we were trying to talk about Brock Lesnar not being on TV and what they're missing. In WWE right now is I think they don't really even know really what direction they're going in. You know, for 2 weeks they've been telling us John Cena is the #1 contender. He's going to be given his rematch clause, and then all of a sudden on Monday, Triple H says, you know, maybe you getting the rematch isn't what's best for business. I, you know, need, you know, guys to impress me to see who's going to get the shot at Brock Lesnar. So we get to see Randy Orton, Chris Jericho, John Cena, Roman Reigns, Seth Rollins. Everybody's out there trying to state their case on you know, why they're more important than whoever else is in, you know, in the ring at that time. And then you know, they have a 6-man, you know, where there were hunters out there trying to evaluate the talent and see who the best is out there. And then at the end, it's not even John Cena who gets the win, even though during the show they're showing us commercials trying to get us hyped up to, you know, either buy the network or just get hyped up to watch Night of Champions as it is. And they're giving us the match John Cena versus Brock Lesnar. They're telling us who's going to be in there. It's almost like a spoiler for what's going to happen at the end of the show. And then come the end of the show, you know, it's Roman Reigns who gets the pin, looking like he's the man. So is Roman Reigns the #1 contender? You have more questions than answers. And then you sit down and you watch the Triple H interview today where he does a sit-down gimmick with Michael Cole, and they're talking about, you know, what's going on in WWE at the time. And he's just nonchalantly saying John Cena is the #1 contender. He better be ready. You know, he better be more prepared than he was last time at SummerSlam because he's going to get his ass kicked. Definitely, I think that, you know, anytime you have a pay-per-view, John Cena versus Brock Lesnar, it's going to be one of the biggest matches that WWE can offer. It's always, you know, it's going to be a good one. I mean, I've seen Brock Lesnar fight a handful of times live at these shows. You know, I went and saw Lesnar versus Triple H. I saw Lesnar versus Punk. Lesnar versus Cena. I got to see Lesnar versus Taker. You know, of course, when he beat Taker's streak at WrestleMania 30, that's, you know, one of those wrestling moments that you're never going to forget. It's definitely going to live on in everybody's mind, and it's going to be crazy. And, you know, the feel that Brock Lesnar gets when he comes down to the ring is like it's not wrestling. It's almost like that other stuff might be wrestling, but this is real. I mean, that's the only way that I can really put it. John Cena versus Brock Lesnar is going to be a fight. I think that people were really hoping for the blood and guts that we got at Extreme Rules when that match happened a few years ago at SummerSlam, and we didn't get to see the elbows to the to the liver and the kidneys. We didn't see the elbows to the forehead, which busted Cena open very early in that Extreme Rules match. And but we got to see Brock Lesnar just throw John Cena around the ring like he was a rag doll. He got to throw him around basically like the way I wrestle my kids. When they wake me up early on a Saturday morning because they want me to get them cereal or take them to the store to buy them donuts or something like that. And Dad gets up and Dad's all ferocious and he's hitting the FU on him. I'm throwing one while I'm picking the other one up and I'm throwing that one over. It's just the way you start a fun morning. And that's basically that's the way SummerSlam went. Brock being the champion is the main thing that we're trying to talk about here. Brock being the champion, the problem is that you got John Cena as a #1 contender. I know there's a lot of people thinking that they're pushing towards Roman Reigns, moving towards, being a guy that can go up against them. And except for that, who do they really have? I mean, you've got, Rock is a guy that's sort of on the roster, but that he's not going to come back unless it's WrestleMania. We were lucky enough to get him at a Royal Rumble. We were lucky enough to get him in an Elimination Chamber, but I don't think he's going to work another show like that. I think Rock is a WrestleMania or nothing kind of guy now. If we ever even really get to see him wrestle again, I know that he says the right things when he's asked, about wrestling, as he says they do. Wrestling's in his blood. He loves wrestling. But it's just that I don't think Rock's a guy who's going to wrestle. I think the main thing that's involved with Rock is money. I mean, I think that's what it comes down to. He's not going to wrestle for free. He knows what his name value is worth. He's not going to go in there for no reason. It was awesome to see him at WrestleMania 30. But, Rock's not a guy who's going to come back and do some 2-minute promo with a guy like Adam Rose. Rock is going to work with Roman Reigns. Rock is going to work with Brock Lesnar. Rock is going to work with John Cena. And honestly, that's about it. Brock Lesnar versus Sheamus. Brock Lesnar versus Wade Barrett. Brock Lesnar versus... I can't even put guys that might be, close to the top who deserve a shot at a guy like this. There it really is nobody else. I mean, I think that, with Night of Champions, there's the thought that maybe, somebody will run in and help John Cena not win the match, maybe get disqualified, and then, Brock would be the champion. He would win the match, and then he would go off and we wouldn't see him again for a while. And, then you could have some sort of a John Cena match, main event, Hell in the Cell, main event Survivor Series or TLC, and you would just sort of forget about Brock being the champion and why he's not there. But if Brock was on the show and Brock needed somebody to fight him, there's nobody really out there that makes sense, for what they're doing. I think that's why WWE is hitting this mode right now with Monday Night Raw, where they just don't really know what to do in order to get somebody from point A to point B. You name somebody the #1 contender, and if they can't go out there and have promos against the guy that he's supposed to have the match against, what do you do with them? Are we just supposed to see John Cena versus The Miz and John Cena versus Damian Sandow, and him beating guys like this on Monday Night Raw in the main event is supposed to get you excited to see Brock Lesnar? Brock Lesnar is with Paul Heyman. Maybe if Paul Heyman actually had some sort of a stable, if you could go back in the days like it was with like Ric Flair and the Four Horsemen. Anytime you had a match, like let's say it's Sting building up towards a match at Starrcade, Sting is going to have to go through the members of the Four Horsemen. He's going to have to fight Benoit one week. He's going to have to fight Mongo one week. He'll have to fight Arn Anderson in the last week, and he'll beat all 3 3 of those guys, but by the end of all 3 of those matches, he's not going to be at 100% by the time he finally gets to fight Flair. And that was the point of all of those matches. John Cena is just a guy who's just supposed to just get to Night of Champions, and all of a sudden, just because it's John Cena, just because it's Brock Lesnar, this is a match that we're supposed to care about. I really think that Night of Champions is a match that, Night of Champions is a show that really is going to matter at the end of the day. I think that when you look at the card that they've been building and the card that they have so far, it's going to be fun. I mean,